This meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. I have a few proposed changes before I open it to the board. First, under board business, to postpone item A and item C. Those were reports scheduled to be made by the city engineer. His wife delivered a baby yesterday, so he is unable to be here this evening. So I would propose revising the agenda to postpone those to our recess meeting in November. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, those matters have been postponed to the recess meeting in November.
All right,
Hold on, I've got one more. And then we have an item that needs to be added to item 11C, the Office of the City Clerk, and that is approval for the advertisement of the source of supply annual list for all city departments. I would propose adding that under City Clerk as item number 3 and adding it as a consent agenda item. Is there any objection to that proposed provision? Any objection to adding that item on the consent agenda? The approval of the source of supply, or approval of advertisement for the source of supply bid list for all city departments. All right, seeing none, that item's been added as a consent item. Now, are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Alderman Dumas.
under mayor's business, item A to consent.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to move item A under mayor's business, the approval of each of the letters of agreement between Child Fund International, United Way, the Starkville Housing Authority, and the City of Starkville on behalf of the Golden Triangle African American Cultural Society, DBA Brick Fire Project, to the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revision.
Under board business, item B to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed moving item B, the approval of the holiday schedule for calendar year 2012 as presented to the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
Under Office of the City Clerk, item number 2 to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11C2, the approval of the City of Starkville claims docket, except for the fire department as of October 27, 2011. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revision?
And then under board business, item D, is there a, other than approval on the report of that, is that something you would be giving with next steps coming out of that report, or?
No, the Chief Administrative Officer was scheduled to give that report.
Well, I'll go ahead and move approval on that, well, on consent.
All right. Alderman Dumas has proposed moving item D under board business to the consent agenda, the approval of a summary of the redistricting work session held by the Board of Alderman on October 25th, 2011, 5:30 in the City Hall courtroom as presented. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision.
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revision. Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we place Roman numeral, Board Business Roman numeral, Department of Business Roman numeral 11, I, personnel, number 1, and that the salary will be that as listed in the staff recommendation. I think that's a 1-year probationary period with those conditions, and that all be put on the consent agenda.
All right, Alderman Perkins has proposed revising the agenda to place the approval of the hire of Ronnie W. Betts Jr. as a crew leader in the Water Division of the Public Services Department as presented in the packet with the salary schedule and 1-year probationary period noted on the consent agenda. Alderman Perkins, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
I think that almost exhausts everything we can do, I believe, except, that's all I have, Mayor.
I have
Alderman
one.
Vaughn.
On the, board business. Up on the board business, F, put it off so it can be explained to the public, please.
All right. Item F, under board business, the calling for a public hearing on the adoption of form-based code district for the city of Starkville has been removed from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Further proposed revisions. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, sir.
Any further? Alderman Sistrum.
I have two. Tonight we were going to hear a report and approve a summary of the redistricting work session that was held. We did have that work session, and I think the thing that came out of that work session was that while we might have the technical expertise to begin that project in-house, that it would be useful for us to have a consultant help mediate the process and help us all get on page with going forward with redistricting. So if it is acceptable to the board, I'd like to add an item under board business to approve directing the chief, and I've reduced this to writing, I'll pass it down to you, an item to approve directing the chief administrative officer and the city clerk to draft proposed language for a request for qualifications, an RFQ, for a consultant to work with the Board of Alderman on redistricting the city, and to present the proposed request for qualification for the board's consideration at the recess meeting of November 15th, 2011. And if it's possible, I'd like to put that on consent.
All right, the proposed revision is to add what will now be item H on the board business portion of the agenda, and the proposal is to add it as a consent item. It would be a motion to approve directing the chief administrative officer and the city clerk to draft proposed language for request for qualifications, RFQ, for a consultant to work with the Board of Alderman on redistricting the city, to present the proposed request for qualification for the board's consideration at the recess meeting of November 15th, 2011. Any objection to adding that as item H on the agenda as a consent agenda item? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that's been added to the agenda as a consent agenda item. Alderman Sistrunk, do you have further proposed revisions?
I have one. Item G under board business was a result of a miscommunication about the timing of that travel. I do intend to attend this workshop on incentivizing commercial development, but I will be paying for my own travel and have arranged other transportation.
So is your proposed revision to
withdraw
remove that matter from the agenda?
To withdraw that. Mhm.
Alderman Sistrunk has proposed removing item G from the agenda, the approval of travel of Alderman Sistrunk to Richland to attend the incentivizing commercial development seminar with advanced travel authorized. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been removed from the agenda. Further proposed revisions. Alderman Sistrunk? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the consideration of the approval of the consent agenda as revised. Any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. You now have before you the approval of the minutes for September 20th, 2011. Discussion.
Move approval.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of the minutes of the City of Starkville Board of Alderman recess meeting of September 20th, 2011. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will carry us to comments by the mayor and board. I have one comment. At our last meeting, we had discussed having work sessions for redistricting and then a work session to follow on the capital improvement plan and municipal facilities, alternating those work sessions on the in-between Tuesdays of board meetings. Well, one thing that I neglected to consult with my schedule and some of the members of the board schedule is that three of us are scheduled to go to the National League of Cities Conference next week. We will be out of town. So provided that schedules work out better, we'll push that work session to November 22nd, which is the next Tuesday that will be in between board meeting cycles.
Mr. Mayor, what that meeting on November 22 of 2011 going to be for?
It will be to discuss the capital improvement plan and hopefully Demery Grubbs, who is a consultant that's been working with the city on that process, will be here to make a presentation and consult with the board and then to begin the conversation on where we go from here on municipal facilities.
Mr. Mayor, could we get a packet of information so it'd be worth our time, particularly my time as well, I'm sure, as well as the other board members, so we'll know what we're going to discuss before we get here?
Yes.
And we're going to meet in this boardroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have, that concludes my comment, and we do have one scheduled board comment, and that is the recognition of the Employee of the Month by Alderman Corey.
I have the honor this month of getting to recognize Larry Black from the Street Department for the Employee of the Month for November of 2011. Is he here? All right. Larry Black is Employee of the Month for November 2011. He is Superintendent of the Street Department and has worked for the City of Starkville since May of 1998. Larry is very committed to the city and takes his job responsibilities very seriously. He shows up every day with a smile on his face and a winning attitude. Larry has a great relationship with the members of his crew, and his willingness to do his job correctly has permeated through the street department. Larry is always willing to go that extra mile to make sure his department runs smoothly. His prior work experience in construction and road building allows him to solve any problem the department may encounter concerning storm sewers, drainage, and keeping roadways passable. Larry is also concerned with the safety of the citizens of Starkville. He is often called after hours to take care of emergency needs, such as downed trees blocking roadways and salting roads during winter storms. If a pothole is reported somewhere in the city, Larry makes sure his crew repairs it in a timely manner. Larry is never one to seek personal accolades, but he should be recognized for his efforts behind the scenes for keeping Starkville functioning at its best. His leadership, experience, work ethic, and attitude are truly an asset to the city. The City of Starkville is proud to recognize Larry Black as Employee of the Month for November of 2011.
Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Mayor, I pray deeply for this board. I pray so much that we can get along and stop doing making so many biased decisions for all the citizens of Starkville. We make a lot of decisions, biased decisions. We make a decision over here and then come over here and make a different decision. Well, I pray so much from the depths of my heart that we can do the right thing for every citizen here in Starkville, every taxpayer here in Starkville. Because somewhere down the line, we are failing some of our constituents and our taxpayers because we disagree on some things and we agree on some things, and these things be the same thing. And I say it all the time that, you know, we know what every ward needs, we know it, but we're so reluctant to do the right thing for every ward that is needed. And after saying that, Ms. Brewer, Mr. Griffin, and Mr. City Attorney, can someone explain to us the ordinance or the policy and the procedure for a trailer being in the city limits? And somewhere down the line, like this trailer on West Main, would someone explain to the public and my constituent how is this so and when it's gonna be moved?
Alderman, if I may.
You may.
Mr. Latimer, I'm sorry, it is in his hands at this point in time because there's a process that we've got to go through, and we're going through the administrative hearing process now, and good, Mr. Latimer's back. Mr. Latimer, would you assist me in explaining to Alderman Vaughn about the FEMA cottage that is sitting on West Main Street? I was saying that it's going through the administrative process, but we are still in the process of researching exactly what our options are and getting it moved.
Correct, and the issue was posed last week, and I advised to follow our normal internal procedures for properties that are non-conforming. We know who owns it now, and the building department was tasked to go through that process.
How did this process happen when we had another one of my constituents come to Mr. Kemp, Mr. Griffin came to you, and we told him that, I think it came to Mr. Kemp, and told him that he couldn't do this. But at the same time, we allowed this to happen. How did we let this fall through the crack like this?
Well, Alderman Vaughn, the constituent who you're referring to, actually came to the building department and wonder of wonders asked before they actually acted. When you told that the zoning did not allow the placement of a Katrina cottage, which is considered a manufactured home. It's not a trailer, it's classified as a manufactured home, but there's a difference. He actually asked and explained to him that the location that he had selected was not allowed for the zoning ordinance. In the case of the cottage that's currently located on West Main Street, it just appeared one Friday afternoon and the sidewalk was damaged in the process of placing it on there. And the adjacent property owner initially had allowed them to hook up a garden hose and an extension cord to do cleanup on the trailer as it was setting. As far as we understand, there's not been anyone living in the site. There's no power, there's no water, there's no sewer connection. And it's proven a little bit more difficult to have it removed than it was for them to simply come and drop it on the site.
Can anyone give us a time, how long it'll be sitting, how long before it be moved?
We're going through the process right now. The property was, it was a dilapidated house on the property a couple of years ago, which was demolished by the city. Liens have been placed onto the property. Apparently the taxes have not been paid at the courthouse. The property has been acquired, supposedly, that's what we're trying to determine. A person in Columbus has acquired the property. Apparently he gave permission to the cottage owner to place the mobile home there or the manufactured home. No one bothered to contact the building department or the city. It just showed up one Friday afternoon.
Mr.
It's
Griffin.
proven a lot more difficult to remove it than it is to, place it on there illegally.
From a timeline standpoint, when is the next administrative hearing that this matter is going to go forward in?
It will be at the November 15th.
And was it noticed for that hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Will the board, myself and the board be notified when we get it moved, please?
Yes, sir.
Further comments from the members of the board? Alderman
I
Carver.
just want to use this open forum time. Had an opportunity last week to meet with some mayors from around the country, and I kind of heard the talk of what they would do is actually have a citizen committee that would go and kind of common in the northeastern part of the country, but they would go and actually review old ordinances, our ordinance book, and I didn't know if we'd ever had talk of that, and maybe what they do is just review ordinances if there's one that doesn't pertain to us anymore, maybe ordinances that are out of date or, have been replaced with new ordinance. I didn't know if there's ever been talk in the city of Starkville. Have y'all heard of maybe going them through the ordinance book with the citizen committee, volunteer, and find things that might not adhere to the city of Starkville anymore?
To my knowledge, that's something that hasn't happened in the past. We do have two members of the board that have been here longer than me. I don't know if Alderman Perkins or Alderman Corey would speak to it, but certainly something that
Yeah.
could be done if the board wanted to take that initiative.
It was something I just thought about maybe that we could do, and we got about halfway through a term, and I think everybody's got comfortable enough to know what might need to apply to us, and then if there are ordinances that just need to be taken off the books, it might be something I would work on in the near future and see if we could come up with some kind of citizen committee that could look at that.
Further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments from the members of the board? Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll now hear citizen comments, and any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Greetings to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. We want to recognize the vice mayors, Senator Citron and Alderman Vaughn.
Yeah.
Turner?
The citizens were surprised when we read the paper and we seen that one of our committees, the beautification committee, quit. We don't understand it, but we were surprised to read that in the paper. Also, I guess we'll have to move the 9 feet sign up going this way and paint that overhead yellow, and maybe we won't hit it. The blinking lights don't look like that it's working. It painted yellow that and move the signs up, and maybe people will know that if I'm 9 feet above, I cannot go down and tear the lights off the what you call it, after find out that I'm over 9 feet. We would also like to know when is the target date that we be through paying off the school bond issue and the issue with the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments this evening?
My name is Nathan Herring. I am a representative from an organization called the Starkville Skate Park Project. And basically it's just a committee of people that have gathered to get a skate park built in Starkville. It started about a year ago, and Megan Onan is the one that started all this. And I'm sure some of y'all know her, but she's kind of passed down the project to me. And we've done numerous meetings. We've had people come from throughout the community to express their support. We've also had events in support of the skate park. And at some of the meetings, we've had more than 40 people, and at some of the events, we've had more than 100 people show up. And we've also been working with the Starkville Parks and Rec Board, and they've actually recognized us in their budget for the 2012 year. And so we're looking for support for this. But just for some of you that don't know, a skate park, it's basically just a park-type area where there are ramps and obstacles built with skateboarders, rollerbladers, or BMX bike riders in mind. And so why do we need a skate park in Starkville? I grew up here, and it's a nice town, but there's not a whole lot of variety of things for young children to do. And I think this would be a great thing for kids to be able to go and do and have something a little bit different to do in their spare time. And also, I've been here for 22 years, and I've seen the town grow and become better. I've also seen an increase in the amount of outdoor activity that people do in the town. And this has been recently acknowledged by the award of the Healthy Hometown. And I think a skate park would be a really good way to continue on the path that award is set. And so I think it'd be a really good idea. Some of you might be asking, who's going to use this? Well, according to the Sporting Goods Manufacturers Association of America, there are 12.9 million skateboarders in America, And that puts skateboarding at number 3 in the popularity of top sports, with only football and basketball ahead of it, which means that it beat out baseball, soccer, and tennis. So it's a very popular sport, and it's becoming very prominent in the media with things like the X Games, and it's starting to compete with other sports as well. And you might also be asking, don't a lot of people get hurt doing skateboarding? Well, actually, you're much less likely to get hurt skateboarding, especially in a skate park. And it's much less likely that you'll get hurt than playing football, basketball, or soccer. And basically, I'm just here today to see if any of you would like to support this issue, and if you would, I'd be happy to talk to you outside of this meeting, give you some more information, and you're welcome to come to any of our meetings or events or anything like that. So yeah, I have some pamphlets I've made for you guys, just a little more information about skate parks. It's got my contact information in it, so if you'll be so kind to look at that, it'd be really awesome. And I'll just leave this here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances, and we have 2 public appearances scheduled tonight. The first is by Jennifer Gregory on behalf of the Main Street Association. And Ms. Gregory, you will have a maximum of 10 minutes to make your presentation, and I would ask that you remain for any questions or comments that the board may have at the conclusion.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Thank you all for placing the agenda item of allowing us to close off the 1 block of Main Street for the community Christmas tree lighting on the consent agenda. We certainly appreciate y'all's support. I just did want to briefly let you know about the event and hope that you'll attend and hopefully some of your constituents as well. The Starkville Community Christmas Tree Lighting will be this Sunday, November the 6th at 6 o'clock in front of the county courthouse on Main Street. We have purchased, the Convention and Visitors Bureau has purchased a 16.5-foot artificial pre-lit with LED lights Christmas tree that will be displayed in front of the courthouse and will remain there throughout the holiday season. The date was chosen because it is it's the same day as the Christmas open house, which all of our downtown and several other retailers in Starkville are participating in, as well as a Santa event that we're doing, which benefits the United Way of North Central Mississippi. So the mayor has graciously agreed to participate in the tree lighting event. We'll also have some performances from the Black Voices Gospel Choir from Mississippi State, as well as a children's youth choir. We're going to have hot chocolate and cider, and we think it's just going to be a really fun, festive event for the community to kick off the holiday season. So we hope you'll participate, and we appreciate your support.
Do we have any questions or comments for Ms. Gregory?
Mr. Mayor, just very brief, Ms. Gregory, this is certainly a very a long-standing event. I remember one year we were in board meeting here. We recessed our board meeting to go down in front of Cadence Bank to light the Christmas tree. So that tells you the significance of this event. But just want to appreciate you all for your plans and for putting this forward for our city.
Thank you, sir.
You said it's November the 6th.
Yes.
Give us the date, time, and place one more time, please.
Sure. It is Sunday, November 6th, this Sunday, at 6 o'clock p.m. in front of the county courthouse on Main Street. It'll be in the plaza area between the front door and the sidewalk, right in the center. And it will be lit that evening and will remain up through the holiday, through the end of December. And we invite everyone to participate.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
It should be noted, I guess, that this is part of a much bigger process, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Jennifer, but I also want to thank Terry and Starkville Electric, because obviously the past couple of weeks they've been working hard to get the wreaths and the garlands up. A lot of questions have been why so early, but we've put them in place so that they're in time for the Christmas open house, which is it Sunday as well?
It is. It's Sunday from 12 to 5.
So many more additions this year and many more to come. So
where's Santa Claus?
At the partnership office from 11 to 3. Cookies with Santa. Tickets are $10 per child, and they all proceeds.
Children only?
Children only have to pay. You can come for free, and all the proceeds benefit the United Way. But I want to echo Alderman Dumas. We certainly appreciate Starkville Electric Department. They have been instrumental in all of the new Christmas decorations, and there are more to come that we're working with the department, and they have been extremely generous and helpful. So we appreciate that city department very much.
We're halfway there.
I hope closer than that.
Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Ms.
Thank
Gregory.
you.
Our final public appearance of the evening is by David Mullendore on the matter of the appearance of his water at the Hotel Chester and the invoice he has received for flushing out his water lines. And Mr. Mullendore, you'll have a maximum of 10 minutes, and I ask that you two remain for questions and comments.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mayor Wiseman, for putting me on the agenda tonight to speak. And I'd like to start by saying it's a little bit ironic that I'm here because of dirty water apparently caused by the Clean Water Act. My purpose is to call into question the Water Department's position on charging customers for water that from a reasonable man perspective is not usable for anything but watering grass and plants. The attitude of once it goes through your meter, you pay for it is certainly unique. First, at this point, you don't know you have a problem until bad water comes out of a tap. In my case, that means the entire water system has been compromised. Once bad water is discovered, with a transitory user base like I have, it must be cleared out of the system. Customers pay for and expect to receive clean accommodations and linens, internet, TV service, and take it for granted that usable water for their hygienic needs is included. It's painfully obvious to me from my experience that without being able to satisfy their usable water requirements, other guest comforts and expectations quickly fade to a secondary position, and water takes an ironic and irate front stage. For out-of-town visitors, perception becomes reality when one gets dirty water coming out of their shower or sink, just when they're ready to brush their teeth. Regardless of explanations, no one looks good when this scenario occurs. I'm not questioning how much water went through the meters. Rather, I'm disputing how much could not be used. There are 148 fixtures that require flushing in my facility. 50 are cold water only, 98 are both hot and cold water, all of which must be flushed until there's clear water moving through the fixture itself. I'm not asking for credit for over 140 staff hours dedicated to flushing out the dirty water and then re-cleaning every fixture during the August, September, and October billing cycles. I'm not asking for the cost of any lost business. I simply don't understand how the water department, and possibly the city as well, can download an expense that should legitimately be a cost of doing business on your P&L and not the end users. There are 9 samples from each of the times flushing incoming turbidity from my system. There's also ice machine and bar gun dispensing filter for the month of September that I want to just put on the table. These are my water samples, which are free and welcome to look at. And here's a filter that come off of my ice machine and bar gun dispensing system. I called my alderman, Mr. Corey, on 4 different occasions to invite him over to see firsthand what my customers and staff were experiencing, and never received a return phone call. Twice, voicemail was full. Unfortunately, this puts you all in a position of having to imagine my circumstances. So if you will, I'd appreciate it if you'd do that. I thought one of the alderman's duties was to respond to and assist where possible your ward constituents and work together as a group for the betterment of all. And maybe you are doing that. In fact, I'm sure you are. But I find it a little bit perplexing that I've got to go with this all alone in front of you all. Of equal or greater importance to the above is the question of what is being done to mitigate this problem. I believe that given the severity of the problem, the city should have an action plan to do several things. One is develop an early warning system to notify at a minimum nursing care and retirement facilities, hospital and medical facilities, transient lodging facilities, and people with compromised immune systems upon first receipt of a brown water problem. I say this because it seems naive to state the water supply is safe at the recipient's end with the level of turbidity that's being distributed to end users whenever there's a brown water instance. Next is to provide assistance to the needy and handicapped when flushing turbidity from their hot water heaters. Investigate the cause of the current problems as well as the cast iron piping for solutions up to and including replacement. Ensuring the safety of the water supply should take a high priority, maybe even a higher priority than the current effort in a new municipal center, inasmuch as I think that is also needed. Provide end users with a monthly update, and if there's no short-term solution, consider some type of secondary filtering stations where the problems are more pronounced. Homes and businesses might need recommendations on how to minimize further contamination of their water system for installing their own filtering equipment, for example, with some idea of the pros and cons and costs so that they're put in a position of being able to make an objective decision. Unfortunately, this might be another one of those crumbling infrastructure problems that are so prevalent in our country today. Not doing everything we can will only serve to exacerbate the problem down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullendorf. And before opening the floor to comments, I just want to make a couple of general comments about the current condition of our water. I think this is something that we're all deeply disturbed by. The city of Starkville has always enjoyed very high quality water, and we, like many communities throughout the United States right now, are experiencing a fair amount of discoloration in our water supply due to the mandates that are coming from the federal government on increased chlorination in the water supply. Now, I've had numerous conversations with Doug Devlin on the subject, and as a matter of fact, the city water department is hiring somebody tonight who is being hired as part of a series of new hires to get specifically at this issue. Doug ensures me that this is a problem that is correctable. What I've asked Doug to do is take some time intensively over the next few weeks to investigate what other communities around the country are doing to get at this issue so that we make sure we're doing everything we can as a community to restore the condition of our water. He will be coming to the board within the next month to make a presentation on what his efforts are going to be to get at the condition of our water and what he believes the attainable results of those efforts will be. I'll now open the floor for questions and comments from the members of the board. Alderman Corey.
That doesn't bring us, though, to the point of Mr. Mullendorf's request and what options that we might have available to remediate some of the issues he's experienced. And so I guess that's really the heart of what we need to get to now is what can we do to address this particular issue, as opposed to just the overall issue that we've been having in the city. So Lynn, I'm sorry, but I'm going to call you out for just a second and ask, have you looked over any options that for remediation regarding the bills, the problems that we've experienced with this?
We have certainly discussed it, and not found that there is anything that we are able to do that would satisfy Mr. Mullendorf in the sense that we've had it all over town and it would set a precedent. I think that we would find untenable in our ability to sustain our water department enterprise fund in order to respond to each concern that we have had over the past number of months.
Have we had other requests for this type of request? I know we've had complaints, but I'm talking about
Well,
specific.
I have certainly had people who have mentioned compensation, water that they felt was not adequate to their needs.
But has it been with other, just individual homeowners or other actual businesses? Because it's, to me, there's a difference between he's providing a service that he does have to provide, these things,
I don't specifically recall businesses inquiring.
I feel like we ought to do something about this, because this is, kind of, it impacts this gentleman's ability to run a business. To be able to run his own business because of the condition of the water.
Chris, are there legal parameters? I know there is a policy the board's adopted, and this is also a heavily regulated area by the Public Service Commission. Are there any legal parameters that you could speak to?
The state law controls the issue, and it starts with the Mississippi Constitution, Article 4, Section 100, which says in essence that debts to the municipality cannot be generally waived. The state statute then follows from that, which is 21-27-27, which states that a municipality may not provide free utilities. The AG has looked at utility cases and construed those issues to come up with a waiver exception. And there are two criterias to give a waiver, and both of the criterias have to be met. The first is that unforeseen circumstances have happened, and the second is that the customer did not receive the benefit of the service. If the board makes a factual finding, then the AG has said a waiver could be applied in those scenarios.
Alderman Carter.
First of all, thank you for bringing this to my attention
Yes,
and the
sir.
board's attention, and thank you for bringing those up and letting us look at that. And I think I'll be definitely sympathetic in whatever I can do with whatever we find with this discussion and where it goes with that. And I want to say that your presentation was excellent, and I also want to know what we can do that, the notification of groundwater. The city has a process, kind of just getting that out for public thought from the mayor. Is there a way that we can somehow, if we know that it's going to be a bad season or a bad week or what causes that, is there any way that we can notify maybe people that are dependent and they can't get out of their house, no way to get out and flush their house?
Well, we're under requirements when the water becomes unsafe to use to notify the public, and you've probably seen bull water notices in the past. But as long as the water is usable, it's a different scenario. I guess it would depend on how you determine the standard for notifying when the water, I guess, is not clear but still usable. I suppose anything's possible from a notification standpoint.
So would you say that through this ordeal that you probably lost customers due to this, or had anybody leave, or?
Well, I've had people not come back, let me put it that way. And the people that I would expect to come back, let me put it that way. And, I have a difficulty with the term of discolored water, because if you take a look at this, there is particulate matter in the water. And some of them, even the last two in particular, the particulate matter is getting larger. And if I understood the newspaper article correctly, the scale in the pipes is basically rust, cast iron piping, and because of using oxidizing chemicals as part of the Clean Water Act, it's interacting with the cast iron and releasing, basically the rust. So I'm assuming that the pipes are really old to begin with. But this particulate matter, if it's released in the pipes and then it ends up in hot water heaters and so forth, can provide a shield and a nutrient for bacteria that is not necessarily very helpful to people. And under certain heating conditions, it can, these different forms of bacteria can grow and intensify and possibly make people sick. So I'm, when you say, when you get an unusable water quality, is that at the point of where the sample is taken? And if so, are there samples, if it's not and the samples are taken at the end of a run or something, I can truly understand that. But if you get a safe sample and you happen to be at aquifer, that doesn't mean the water's safe by the time it gets to the end user. And that's why I'm suggesting, some kind, it doesn't even have to be a city thing. It could be ward by ward, where there's what we used to call in different places I've been around Robin, where there's been a problem. If one citizen sees it and there's a list of people, they can call the next person and notify the water department, and then the people pass it around to each other, and it could be developed ward by ward. I'm not trying to provide a solution, but a suggestion, because I know everybody's busy, but if this problem disappears today, well, then I think that's one thing. But if it returns on some kind of regular basis, I just myself worry about whether we're providing people with a usable product. As you say, well, did they receive the product or whatever you were talking about? Well, what's the definition of usable? For my customers, they don't have any choice. I mean, they're here. They can't run over to the next door neighbor's house and see if they've got a bottle of clean water. It doesn't work that way. So I'm particularly sensitive to trying to put both the city and my hotel in the best possible light, frankly.
What's the current status of your water? Are you still experiencing this, or is it finally cleared up?
No, 9/27 was the last time I had really bad water come in. And I'd called Mrs. Spruill and asked her if she'd like to come over and take a sip of it. And she said something a little greater than no, and helped me, because it was late in the afternoon, get a hold of the water department to flush the main line, which they did, and they called me back about an hour and maybe about an hour and 45 minutes later, and said they had it flushed. And then I started flushing that night and finished on the 28th. Sir.
So you said you lost about 140 man-hours for flushing your systems?
Well, flushing the system on 9 different days, and then re-cleaning the fixtures, because it really discolors even the fixtures. You have to go and repolish the brass sinks, and so my poor housekeeper's about ready to cry over this, but it's one of the things, even for transient customer, for me, it wouldn't bother me to see a slightly discolored water in the toilet, but guess what a customer thinks when they go into a room, The girls didn't clean the toilet. So, yes, ma'am.
I wish to speak to the mayor. I do understand the problems that this has presented to you, and it sounds as if you've taken the time to educate yourself a great deal about this, but I think it would be helpful to us as a board to hear Doug's report and to find out what the scope of this is, whether it is limited to your facility, whether it is truly unusable water, whether we need to do any testing. But I think it would be useful to hear Doug's report and get more information before we make a decision about what to do going forward in regards to your situation.
Yes,
Your other
ma'am.
points are all well taken, and I'm sure Mr. Devlin will be working on those.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
Alderman Perkins.
Ms. Pruitt, the current time, the decision is for the bill to be paid. Is that right? Ms. Pruitt, let me just weigh in a little bit. I have seen matters of this magnitude come to the board year after year after year and over the years. Very unfortunate situation that the business owner experienced with respect to this matter. But it gets down to a matter of law and a matter of policy. The city attorney is correct in that the Constitution mandates that the municipality cannot forgive a debt. And the debt is that if we the municipality provide a city service, then we expect payment on it. Respectfully stated, that's what happened here. We provided a service, and once we provide that service, respectfully, no disrespect to the petitioner here, we just have to receive payment. It put the city in a very tough legal position when you start making exceptions. Of course, there were brown water issues throughout the city. The water department gave notices as that situation arose throughout the city. It was in various wards, including mine. And given the brown water matter, I think if we were to create an exception and give some type of relief to this business owner, then we would have to likewise treat all others similarly that are similarly situated. And that line probably would grow rather long. And if we did not treat them similarly, we'd be treating them differently, and then we could have some legal exposure. I was not going to weigh in on this, Ms. Brewer, but I felt for whatever worth, if any, that the board finds my statements to be, they'll be fine. But I think the important thing is, regardless of what one finds my statements to be, is that I just share the history of this information with you. I must say respectfully, Mr. Mullendore, I appreciate you, and I respect you to the fullest. But it is my legal opinion, given the board's history over the past, that the staff's decision is correct as it now stands. And their decision is respectfully and very respectfully that the bill must be paid. I've had constituents in the past, not brown water issues, and they've been throughout the city in various wards. I mean, this issue, it comes up, it has come up over the years. I have seen it in year after year and have been in decision making. There have been ones I wanted to vote for it, but I just have always tried to be consistent and do the right thing. I mean, I don't have nothing that I'm gaining by this. I just wanted to, and the only reason I make these comments, I thought I just wanted to share that history there. But and the staff is correct, because there is nothing on the city's end where there was in that the a service was rendered. You know, very unfortunate. I think that the relief that we need to try to get out of this whole situation is try to move forward, and hopefully that we continue to do everything necessary and proper within our governing powers to ensure that we provide the best and cleanliest and safest water. I think we're all in agreement to that, but I don't think we can give any compensation or any monetary relief here on this matter. You know, there may be some that disagree with me, but I'm just saying this respectfully. I just want to say this, Mr. Devlin. I think that we just, and the mayor stated it well in his statements, I think that's the overall relief and the only relief that we can give. So I just wanted to share that information, and hopefully we'll move forward in the direction that and the mayor stated it correctly on that. We just need to move forward on that and try to better our water supplies. We continue to go and give the better notices. And maybe this probably won't be the last time we experience brown water. We all experience inconveniences in some kind of way with the city, but you know, it may be at some point in time. But I think in this instance, you know, there's nothing, in my opinion, that we can do in terms of giving some type of monetary relief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
May I comment?
No. Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
I think we can still continue on with we will still continue on with the report and the investigation on.
If I may, just for public purposes, one of the things that when they call, I have specifically got in touch with the water department, asked them to flush the lines, and that has been, I think Mr. Mullendore, when he finally got around to calling and talking to us about that, that was the relief available, and that continues to be the relief available to both residents and businesses that are experiencing this, is that we can go flush the lines, and that seems to provide at least some measure of relief for a period of time, and that's what we'll continue to do as we're being called about this.
And I've seen that happen in my neighborhood, like Mr. Perkins. This does appear to be a citywide issue. There's never been any indication that the water was not safe. Is that correct?
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Mullendore.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, that will take us to a public hearing we have scheduled tonight, and that is a hearing on amending the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances Appendix B to the subdivision regulations to include modifications to the street specification section regarding the city's acceptance of streets and other related matters. I'll introduce this one. This is the measure that would allow developers during the development process, rather than being mandated to do two-stage construction of roadways where a partial roadway is built, and then when 85% of the development is complete, the road is completed. Developers would still have that option, but they would also additionally have the option, if they so choose, to build the street out completely at the outset of the development. And there are pros and cons of doing it each way. One of the pros of doing full development at the beginning is the street probably takes on less wear and tear throughout the development process because it is a stronger road to begin with. The biggest con with respect to doing one-stage construction is that the repairs to a road that's already been completed may not look as nice at the end of the construction project, because those have to be made at surface level. Of course, there are other pros of doing one-stage construction as well, such as also the city's potential risk that the road might not ultimately be completed at the end of the development process is also mitigated by having a completed roadway at the outset. After having a very thorough discussion with the city engineer about the positive sides and the negative sides of both two-stage road construction and one-stage road construction, I was of the opinion that we're probably best suited allowing developers the option to do it whichever way is most suited to their project. So I have brought this matter forward. Any questions or comments from the members of the board? But before we get to that, I know the city attorney has some input on this.
Board members, I just made one recommendation earlier today, and that is that the language that you guys are working on, instead of keeping it in Appendix B to the subdivision regulations, because the subdivision regulations are already an appendix, so what we're working on here is an appendix to appendix, that we go ahead and put this in the street section of the ordinance to make it as user-friendly as possible. So I'm not making a substantive change, just a procedural and placement suggestion that we put it at the most prominent place we can in the code.
Questions or comments from the members of the board?
So is this language duplicated in the street section?
It is not.
But you're
It's not
suggesting
currently.
that it will, or that it should
It
be?
won't be duplicative. We're going to move it to that section.
It won't be an
It-
appendix, it'll be a.
Just to relook.
It'll be a code section.
And I know this is not what we're talking about, but under section 2 where we're talking about street widths, is this the only place in which those widths are spelled out? Or is that in the street section of the subdivision regs?
The street widths, I believe, are in the street section
So that's
of the
duplicative
code
here.
of ordinances.
Okay.
Further questions or comments?
Let me just weigh in on what I've been enlightened to about this, and the way I take it in layman terms. With two-stage construction, at the end of the day, when the city gets dedicated, and when the street gets dedicated to the city, it will always be dedicated as a uniform, flat, level, good-looking street, correct?
It-
I'm asking, I guess, Alderman Parker, because he is a developer, but, you know, when you get to that point, if it's a two-stage construction, it may have the wear and tear and may cost the developer a little bit more, but it's gonna be a better-looking street versus a one-stage, save the developer money, but at the same time, they don't have to worry about further asphalt increasing prices and things like that. But at the end of the day, it may be dedicated as a street that's patched looking. You said not patched, it'll be sections, discolored and things like that, but we may receive streets that start off at the start of a neighborhood development that will be patched, per se, right?
But there could be sections, if there was a section that failed, and who knows what that, 2 to 6 years, who knows how long they will be, it'll take them to get 85% built out.
Right.
But there could be sections that are taken out and replaced before they're dedicated to the city. And I don't think that affects the integrity of the road at all.
And it's not a
just-
patch like a pothole
It's not a-
patch.
yeah, it's not a patch.
It would be a section
It's a
of the
section
roadway.
like it is on Whitfield where they had to go back and fix right in front of the park.
Right.
So, was this driven by a developer request, or how did this get brought in before us?
Yes, a developer request came into the office, and as we do in any situation where a developer is making a request, we go through an analysis where we first determine, is it permissible under the code? And in this case, it was not permissible under the code. So then we ask the question, well, should it be permissible under the code? And the conclusion that I came to after discussing it with the city engineer for a while is this probably should be permissible under the code. Another thing I didn't note in the outset that is noteworthy is because of economic conditions, we're seeing developments take longer to build out.
Right.
Which means you've got a much longer period in some cases 10 years or longer, where you've got an uncompleted street that the existing residents in that neighborhood are stuck with until the subdivision's 85% built out. If you had one-stage construction as an option and the developer chose to utilize that option, then those residents would have a completed street for the time while that subdivision is still in development.
And these are subdivision streets. These are not arterial street. I mean, most of these that will be developed under this are subdivision streets. They're not arterial streets, and certainly not main street. They're surface streets for that subdivision. There typically won't be a lot of non-subdivision traffic on these streets.
But at the same time, if it's a one-stage construction, I've been told that the majority of the heavy load traffic happens during the construction phase. So if y'all can imagine putting a street down and then coming back and fixing the patches, well, then it's gonna get torn up in the construction phase. But then I look at it from the standpoint, well, we're talking about economic times and things like that. This is very developer-friendly. And I assume that's why it's pushed by developers and getting pushed by this board. It is a developer-friendly amendment. That's been stated tonight, but at the same time, by doing that, do you think that this is going to bring more developers to Starkville? Is this a common practice that Oh, is this common for city to do one-stage construction on roads? Or is this,
I can't answer that.
you don't know?
I
to that
don't
effect?
know.
Is there any other city around this Golden Triangle or north half of Mississippi that does this?
I can't say.
Ben might can answer.
I
better
can
than-
say that I have seen developments outside the city of Starkville in South Mississippi where the subdivisions are perhaps 30% built out and they already have complete streets and sidewalks in. And it's much more attractive for the people who are living there during the development stage than not having piecemeal construction.
I just see, this is an issue that I don't see more black and white on anything. I think you see, there's a lot of pros and cons to both ways, to one and two stage construction. My fear would be getting dedicated streets to the city of Starkville that are segmented in patches to start. And then you've got the rest of the history of the streets being, complaining. People, I'd rather, if I was to live in a new house, and I never had the opportunity, but I would rather drive on roads that were torn up for 6 or 8 years, but know at the end there's an end to the street being to look like that, and that one day when they finish the construction, it's going to be a nice new road. I personally would rather have it that way than to start my neighborhood with
Until
streets
about
that
year
are
3.
torn up.
Until
No,
about,
I mean,
until
you're a
about year
developer.
3, and then you get tired of.
But as a developer,
because the problem is the city. If it's a one state, when they do that, the city can't come in and patch hole. I mean, they can't come do patching of any kind. So you have a development that's 5 or 6 years old that has potholes and it's almost in some cases degraded down to gravel in some spots, and the city can't satisfy those residents' complaints because it's not a city road. But I mean that's one of the negative issues of it, I guess. And in my neighborhood in particular, the road, it was 2-stage construction. It was, the first stage was so degraded that he did come in and put in the second layer, and the second layer failed, and he had to patch the second layer. It was 2-stage construction, but yet he still had to fix the second stage after he put the second stage in. Because it degrades the roadbed so badly. The heavy traffic, but yeah.
It can also cause significant drainage issues as well, because what happens when the road's partially complete is sometimes it sits below the drainage system. So the roadway actually acts as a channel for water rather than a place where it drains off to the side. And I don't mean to characterize this as 2 stages is really bad and 1 stage is the answer to all of our problems. The reality of the situation is that there are positive sides and downsides to doing it both ways. I think there are enough potential positives and few enough potential downsides to doing 1 stage where it probably at the end of the day is just as good, if not better, than 2 stage and ought to be an option for developers during the process. Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. We will do this in keeping with standard practice for public hearings. We will recognize those wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment first, and then hear anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment. We will continue to alternate back and forth until each side has exhausted a total of 15 minutes or until no one else wishes to speak. At this time, do we have anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Do we have anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Do we have anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment?
All right, good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner. When you constantly amend stuff, you confuse everybody. Then we have our two representatives, Ward 6 and 7. They bring concerns and they just, looked over. You don't feel that it's necessary to look at 6 and 7. Then we have Carver Drive. The people is suffering. We have other subdivisions where it says no trucks. People don't understand what that means. We need to make it plain. If it said no trucks, how do the electric department, the sanitation department, how do those people serve subdivision when they said no trucks? Then how thick is the asphalt? Then how much weight can it hold? Make it plain so that we understand and know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment? Do we have anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed amendment? Seeing no one, that will conclude the public comment portion of the public hearing, and we'll have a final opportunity for questions or comments from the members of the board. Any questions or comments from the members of the board? Do I have any questions or comments from the members of the board? All right, seeing none, that will conclude the first public hearing on the proposed amendment to the subdivision regulations regarding streets. And give me a second to make sure I've got everything.
Goes to form base.
Okay. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of calling for a public hearing on the adoption of a form-based code district for the city of Starkville. Discussion. Alderman Davis.
Just to go back and talk a little bit about this, and forgive me on some of the dates, I can't remember when we initially brought this forward, but back the first part of the year, we had a discussion and made the decision to hire a consultant. Went through an RFQ process, hired a form-based consultant by the name of Placemakers. Placemakers came in, had an initial charrette, which was immediately following the Main Street charrette. That basically started this process, and part of their process moving forward was they've spent several months in the development of code. That form-based code is something that they've now presented back to us, the city, and we have taken that code and we've reviewed that code. It's currently going through the public process with planning and zoning, and it's now time for us to begin our process from a Board of Alderman standpoint. So this is just merely asking that that we begin that process at our next board meeting so that we can look over the document. We're still working through some details and having some discussions on how to finalize that as it presents itself to the board, but we'll have that finalized document at our next board meeting for the first public hearing. So that's an update of where we are now. So with that, I'd like to move approval of calling for the public hearing of the adoption of form-based codes for designated areas within the city of Starkville.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve of the calling for a public hearing on the adoption of form-based code of a form-based code district for the city of Starkville. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of October 27, 2011.
I'm gonna accuse myself.
Discussion.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of October 27th, 2011. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the marriage?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll give Alderman Parker a moment to re-enter the room.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into closed session.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to move into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the marriage?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. I ask that we clear the room so that the board can move into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. And without objection, I'm going to move us into a brief recess. Any objection? Any objections? Seeing none, we'll recess while the room is moved.